Hi there. Thank you for downloading, listening to, and watching the Lean Into Artcast, a show where a couple of visual storytellers get together, take on various topics that tend to bubble up whenever we embark on this scary endeavor of communicating with images. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Droz. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist, and the other host is...
Oh, hey, I am Rob Stenzinger. I do user experience design, and I also make video games.
It's been a while, Rob, but we've got a guest on the show again, and I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, me too. So awesome. Sure. Somehow trapped via the internet.
I won't talk. I won't talk.
So joining us this week is somebody who I've been hoping to get on the show for a long time, only recently finally got around to asking him, is Alex Simmons. Alex Simmons of, what is your website? You got a bunch of them.
Here and Now, Kids Comic-Con, or Blackjack Adventures. Take your pick.
So I have to say, just before we start, if I could grease the wheels by showering you with compliments, okay. There are people in the comics industry who, when I see them, I immediately am smitten by them, and then they become this beacon for me to follow and say, like, just head in that direction, be more like that person, and you will not go wrong. And Alex, you are absolutely one of those people.
Wow.
We met at the Miami Book Fair, I think in 2010.
Yeah.
A few years back. And I saw you teaching children, and I saw how magnetic you were in that room, and how joyful and how warm you were, and how the kids were just delighted by everything you were doing. And I was like, okay, that's what I need to be. And then in talking with you the whole weekend long, I realized, yeah, this is somebody who has an enormous sense of advocacy for his craft and for connecting people with his craft in meaningful ways. So if I could just say thank you just for being who the heck you are, because it's incredible.
Well, hey, thank you for that. It's funny. A lot of times people say, well, what are you about? Why do you do what you do? And I know we're going to get into that. But a lot of it is, I think, when you gel it down, one, I don't think I've ever lost the kid inside. He, she, it has, just been alive and thrilled with the world, sometimes angry with it, but most of the time just thrilled with possibilities. So I think that's been healthy. And I enjoy working with kids. They revitalize me, as I hope what I share empowers them. So it's a mutual, affection thing going on there.
Oh, it definitely shows, and anybody who can see Alex at work should do so. And one of the places that they can see you at work is at the annual Kids Comic-Con, right? Which just celebrated its 13th year. Is that right?
13 years, yes, 13 years on a wing and a prayer. Because
wow.
Unlike some of the other cons people may be thinking about, we are not underwritten. We have no huge money belt or funding sources. A lot of what you would call this is a hopeful and endearing initiative, thanks to a number of the people who come together to make it possible every year in the facility that we're allowed to use, which is Bronx Community College. We've been able to do this for 13 years. I'm always amazed at the end of each one. Oh we did it! It happened again.
And speaking of that, people can listen to you talking about that, the wind up and the pitch for that this past year by listening to the other reason that we wanted to talk with you this week is co-host of the Tell the Damn Story podcast
with my friend Chris Ryan. Yeah,
which is. I am telling you, anybody who's listening, anybody who follows the Lean Into Artcast, if you enjoy when Rob and I crunch on, creative writing topics and communication topics on the show, you need to listen to this one. This is a fabulous podcast. I saw Avengers Endgame. I liked it, and I was like, that's pretty good. And then I listened to your, 4-hour breakdown of the plot of that story?
3 days. I think we were at it. We stopped for water.
But I put down the headphones. I put down the headphones, and I was like, I think I kind of love that movie now.
Well, I would have to say I enjoyed the movie immensely. Chris wants to marry it, and subsequently he saw it 4 times, and I think they're going steady now, trying not to let his wife know. And one of the other things I do, which again I suspect you guys will bring up, is I teach creative arts on several levels to different types of people. And I've had 2 cinema studies groups that I've led where that movie has come up, and the in-depth dialogue and exchange of ideas and things has been really remarkable. So I think there's a lot of meat in that film, and it's funny how some people don't see it.
Yeah. It's worth listening to as well if you just want to enjoy listening to very intelligent, articulate grown men oscillate between joyful. Yes. Well, I was about to say, like, oscillate between like articulate men to joyful boys back and forth throughout the entire thing, and that was a lot of fun to listen to. Yeah. So, but you also get to hear more about just thinking deeply about writing, because, like, as you said, yes, you're a teaching artist. You do screenwriting classes, comics classes. You teach all over the darn world, which we're going to talk about more in the first half of the show. So yeah. Did we tee it up, Rob? Should we kick off to the first section?
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good intro, Alex. I mean, we can we'll definitely revisit like promoting and reminding the leaners what kind of things to follow up on with Alex. So
okay,
yeah, I mean,
we're
excited to be here with you, and yeah, what do you think about diving in?
Okay.
Are you ready, Alex?
Let's go for it.
All right. Well, then I got to cue the music so we can get to this part of the show. All right, here we go. The first half, we talk about what it looks like when we're engaging with this particular topic. This topic of creative work and advocacy. So we just described a lot of jobs. And something we've talked about a lot in the Lean Is Artcast, Rob, is like the many different roles we have to play when especially if we go off an independent path. So I am curious, Alex, as a teacher of screenwriting, you teach comics class, you organize the kids' Comic Con, you write comics. We didn't even talk about Blackjack. We'll talk more about that in the show. You co-host a podcast about writing, and then you recently did this. You just got back from Russia recently, not long ago.
No, that was a year ago. That was a little year ago. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. I went to Russia. I was invited to go to Russia in 2017, initially to a Comic-Con that they give in Moscow. I think it was their 16th year, called the Komissia, and I was honored to be invited to go. And short story. My friend Jerry Kraft, who, I don't know, you may know him, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's coming to Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival this June, yeah.
Right, and he just has this new book out now, The New Kid, which is a wonderful graphic novel. But he's been doing Mama's Boys and some of his other original characters and stories for years. So Jerry contacted me in the summer of 2016 and said, oh, I just happened to be hanging out with the State Department people, and these 6 Russian cartoonists. I said, they're Russian cartoonists from where? Coney Island, because there's a huge Russian population. He said, no, they're in from Russia. They've been touring the United States, and they're in New York now. There's all these things they want to see, and they want to go to Archie. And he knew that I had some connection with Archie, so he said, can you maybe get them in? So I said, well, okay, let me see what I can do. And I called up my buddy Mike. Up at Archie, and he said, yeah, sure, bring him, not a problem. I said, okay, great. And so I thought that was going to be it, that I was just going to bring them up there and they would have a good time and meet the artists and people who were hanging out there. And then the Archie VP says, well, you're going to lead the tour here. You're going to handle it while they're here. So well, I hadn't planned. He says, no, you're coming up. That's it. It's over. So, okay, so I'm up there with them. They're a great group of people. There were translators and everything. We got along during the time they were at Archie. We wound up going to lunch together after that. And then they were going to meet with a film producer that afternoon, who it turns out I happen to know. So they said, oh, come along with us for that. So I wound up spending the whole day with them. And really, with 2 of them in particular, we developed a friendship. It was really some interesting conversations and things. And one of them said to me, you would be great at the Komissia in Russia. It would be great if you could come. And I said, it would be great if I can come, but I don't know if I can handle that, financially and otherwise. And the next thing I know is they put in a few months of talking to the right people. The American Embassy brought me over, and I participated in this event. So the biggest deal for me, I was thrilled to be there. It was very exciting. But the biggest deal for me was the first night reception at the Museum of Moscow. And I may be not saying that name completely right, but it's this huge museum. And this is an international event. And there are people from Belgium and from Serbia and from Nigeria and from all these different places. And there's a few aficionados and dignitaries who are making these speeches in various languages. And then I hear some Alexander. And so what? You know, they said, well, no, they want you to come up and say something. I said, oh, all right. You know, I'm not bashful. I can do that. And I walk up to the mic, and my translator comes alongside of me, and the gentleman finishes the announcement and says, "In American," and I said, okay, what did he say now? He said, well, they've introduced you as the American. And I realized at that moment, as I'm standing in this room with over 100 and some odd people, that I was the only American in the room. And so as I stood there about to speak to this international gathering, I'm representing not only myself, but also my people. You know, and for those of you who don't have, you know, the viewing here, I'm African American, and I'm representing the United States. So that was like, it was like a 30-second of holy smoke. Okay, so hi, everyone. Right into it. You know, it's like, okay, let's roll with that. We'll be back for a commercial. You know?
What a situation to be in. That's fantastic.
Well, you know, it absolutely is fantastic. And I think, again, I mentioned earlier, the kid in me he hasn't left. He's not going to. That kid was remembering seeing From Russia with Love on the big screen when I was very young. And also a junior high school, which is now called middle school, trip where we went to see Dr. Zhivago. All right, so that kid wanted to see some place called Russia decades ago. And here he is. And so everything else that was amazing was just one big Christmas morning. That's really what it was. And there was no time to be caught up in anything negative or frightening or nerve-wracking. None of that. It was too magical. It was too amazing.
There's two observations I have on that. One, like, I can't think of very many people who would be as suited for that moment as you. But two is, like, Rob and I, we were just talking about this, weren't we? About, like, how, like, we've noticed our career paths haven't been like the I Wish song followed by, well, then there's a few trials and struggles, and then we get the thing that we wanted, and then the movie ends. Like, there's this whole serendipity thing, and it's about being ready for the moment, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, you had been preparing in a lot of different ways, not even knowing that this opportunity was going to present itself. But then when it did, you said, "Yes, I would love to do that." And then
grab it with both hands. Yeah. Many of my opening remarks at my workshops, master classes, or things like that is I tell a little story about my mother, and she raised me solo. I was a single parent, and she had health problems and a number of other things. And the two wonderful things that she did, I mean, aside from loving me, which is no small issue, was she never told me that because of our color or our financial situation that I couldn't make it. That if I worked hard for something and really wanted it, I had a shot. And the other thing she never told me was there's us and then there's them. Everybody else is them. Because to me, there's this huge place called Earth. And there's all these different countries and all these different types of people. And all of my life, including my childhood, I was fascinated by meeting different people and going places I'd never been before. And I think that embracing the world that way, even, it has its scary moments. It has its unpleasant moments. But I have found there's a lot more similarities that I've discovered in the various places I've been than there are differences. And so it sort of just keeps me open. You know, like I said, you have a few bad moments here and there, but they don't outnumber the amazing ones.
That's a lovely thought. And also that keeps you open to gathering characters for your stories, I would imagine, right? Because if you have that sense of curiosity and if you're not immediately repulsed by everybody that you meet, then there's going to be an inquisitiveness that's going to add up to something.
Or judging.
Yeah.
You know, I was asked by some students when I was there, did you have, preconceptions about what Russians would be like? I said, no, I didn't. Someone would go, why not? Why not? I said, well, did you have preconceptions about meeting me? And there was a little silence. I said, see? I think it's, sometimes we've been told things and you choose really whether or not you want to act on that. a serious moment for a second. One of the things that was said to me by some of my friends when they knew that I was going to go was, I don't know if you should go. It's, with the political thing, and then, you could get shot over there. And I said, sweetheart, I could get shot here. And you see the look on their face. And, oh, yeah. So, do I want to get shot coming out of a bodega, or do I want to be, maybe if I'm going to get shot, in Red Square? One thing or the other, I'm not going to be afraid to explore certain remarkable possibilities and potentials because of, that might happen. Then I should never leave my house. And stay out of the bathtub. Yes.
So
what do we say? Like, seriously, you summed up so much awesome philosophy right here as we get started. I'm like, wow, it's like, where do we go now? Because
right.
Yeah, that kind of brother. Open-heartedness and willingness to explore. I mean, it's inspiring and awesome. Let's see. So the things that sometimes, I don't know, I have a reputation for like really awkward segues and transitions, and I think this is no exception.
Live up to it then. Go right
ahead. And so, like, going from traveling the world and being becoming an incidental ambassador and whatnot. Like, I mean, there's a series of work that got you there, and like, even like sometimes like we'll explore those like the hands-on things that, like, what are you working on, that and what does that look like? It's like not that we follow a hard and fast format, but we tend to think about that stuff in the beginning of the show. If an option to begin to explore.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. It's like, okay, when you've got that many different roles to perform, is there such a thing as a typical day? If so, what is a day for Alex?
Yeah, I mean, you're sounding more James Bondish right at the moment.
Breathing is usually a good thing. If I wake up and I'm still breathing, we're good. It's funny. I lived most of my life in almost improvisationally. I didn't have what you would call cemented routines, and I really enjoyed being inspired, sometimes moment to moment, creatively in particular. Didn't work out real well with work. So when you have a job, they expect certain things at certain times. So that I could adjust to. But in terms of the more control I had over my life, the more I was pursuing my career and my goals, people would say, well, what genre do you work in, or what age group? You have to focus on one. And I said, it's not the way my mind works. I see something, I'm inspired to tell that story, and it's almost as if the story determines the genre or determines the age group. It's almost like it comes to me with certain elements already, and it says, okay, mix us up and let's see what you get. So over my career lifetime, I've worked on a lot of children's stuff, but I've also worked on plays, comics, children's books, song lyrics, some video and film scripts. I've been an actor, so all of these things sort of float around in my head, and it's like, what world are we going in today? So literally what's happened is there's no Machiavellian plan. It was, I started out graduating from high school. I had done acting. I wanted to do acting. That I thought that's what my career was going to be. And I pursued it for about 2 or 3 years diligently. And I did some off, way off Broadway stuff. I did
like in Syracuse.
Yeah, so something like Nebraska, and I did extra work in films. One of you commented earlier about my voice. I actually did voiceover work, and periodically I stepped back into that. And so I was juggling performing as a part of it. But because of the era that I was in, it was the early 70s, a lot of the work, performing work for African-American men or Black men at that time, seemed to be at one end or the other of this very long pole. So it was either they were doing sounder and things that talked about slavery and back in the old days kind of thing, or we were the angry Black man, And if we were the angry Black man in those days. Again, we were either Jim Brown and Slaughter, or we were,
Mark from Ironside. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Oh well, yeah, but he wasn't as angry as Fred Williamson and Jim Brown and some of the others. They were the staff. They were going out there and kicking butt and taking names. Mark was pushing the wheelchair. Mark. Right. So it was there was this huge diaspora in the middle that wasn't being explored, and so I started writing monologues and things for me to do when I went to audition. And then some of my friends said, "Oh, write one for me and write this and write that." And invariably what happened, I think that really sort of began to segue me into writing, and this will answer your question in a moment, or a day or two, is that I went to see at that time a production by the Negro Ensemble called A Soldier's Play, which eventually became A Soldier's Story in the movies with Denzel Washington and so forth. But I went to see this, I became friends with one of the actors in the show, and he introduced me to this book about this actual Black actor from the 1800s named Ira Aldridge. And Ira was a member of the African Theater in New York at that time, so like early to mid 1800s. He met Edmund Kean, the British actor who was on tour here at the time. And through a series of incidents, he wound up going to England and beginning to perform a lot of Shakespearean pieces over in England. He became a continental celebrity. And he's buried in Lodz, Poland. He had a wife and family there. There was all this. So as I learned about this, I was really fascinated with this. And I thought, boy, I'd love to do some sort of a play or story about him. And then just as life does, one of my favorite characters in the universe, literacy-wise or literature-wise and film-wise, just sort of knocked on my shoulder and said, why didn't you do it with Sherlock Holmes? I went, right, Holmes moved around the 1800s and Ira was there. What if I... And so I put together a play called Sherlock Holmes in the Hands of Othello. And I originally wrote it to perform in it, but eventually realized, no, you have to focus as a writer. This thing is important enough for you to get it right as the writer, not as an actor eager to get on stage with it. And that began to turn the wheel for me more towards writing. I wrote that play. I worked on that sucker for several years, got readings done, and eventually, miracles began to happen. It was published. We did an off-Broadway production at the same time that Frank Langella was doing a Broadway Sherlock Holmes production, and we got better reviews. He said, beating his chest gently. So that is somewhat of the blueprint for how my creative life works. Something happens. A light goes on in one room in my brain, and we work overnight or night after night to get that idea into some form that we can look at and say, does this make sense? Is this fun? Is this exciting? Who is this for? And then we create it, and I say like little gnomes running around in there. And that's me. That's why I've written mysteries, I've written children's books, I've written documentaries, I've written song lyrics, and some of the other things that I've done.
What I'm hearing in there is an enormous sense of trust in your ideas, inspiration, and like whatever is moving you at that moment. There's like a trust that, okay, if I feel there's something there, then I need to investigate it.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because a lot of the time, and one could take this as, whoa, what am I doing? Get a real job. A lot of the times in the early days, I couldn't convince anybody in a position of power to run with my ideas, no matter how many other people thought they were great. And then it would be within a year or two, I'd see somebody else produce it and go rolling right by me, and it would drive me bonkers. But at the same time, it said you weren't wrong. You were just ahead of the game. And that may sound like a pat on the back, but it was actually very frustrating, because if I'm ahead of the game, I should be able to get this done, and I should be, there should be money in the bank, and I should be moving further up the ladder. And basically, I'm sitting here in the bleachers, in the $2 seats, watching everybody else win the game. So it was a tough time.
We had this discussion on the show too. Like, I've done a couple projects that didn't work out, and somebody turns to me like, well, you're just ahead of your time. I'm like, well, that just means I was in the wrong time. Yeah. that's not a win.
It's not a win, but and Jerzy, I'm gonna pull the age card here and say the thing that's come to me, because I am older than you and I know it, and I wear it proudly. I know that one of the things that I've begun to settle into and sort of embrace comfortably is that there are some people who can be ahead of their times or come up with a great idea, connect with the right people, and make that happen. And, you know, hallelujah, there's money, there's fame, there's fortune, whatever. And then there are others who have the idea and it's just as valid, and they put in the 24/7, and it doesn't work out. They don't get it produced. They don't wind up with the fame and fortune. It doesn't mean the idea didn't have value.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that you weren't on target. You just didn't have the connections. And at some point you have to decide, and these are like business decisions, because, you know, we're artists in a business. You decide, okay, what kind of connections do I need to have? Who do I need to know? What am I willing to do to hook up with these people? What am I willing to put up with? And you start making those choices, some of them business, some of them ethical. And that also determines your path. I think at this point, it begins to lead into the things that I do that involve kids, because there's a certain road that I chose to walk, and it came with some prices. And, you know, for a while I was frustrated by it, and there's still some things that rub me the wrong way. I wish I could have done that a little bit better, or I wish that had happened, or I wish that person hadn't conned me, blah, blah, blah. But I've learned lessons from them. And I've also, as I said, embraced the fact that the brain does work. You know, the ideas are valid. You know, there's just a matter of how do you try to pull them off? Who do you hook up with? What are you willing to sell, and what are you not willing to sell out?
So that's, yeah. How do you keep doing this? Like, this is, again, like some of the deepest, most you know, awesome and timeless philosophy we've had on the show ever. So thank you. And
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so I'm hearing the I'm hearing the sort of a gentle reflection on different outcomes that may have gone different ways, that, you know, like business decisions and or in some dimension weren't quite there and ready for a certain time. But so I'm thinking, do you, like, how do you deal with that? With, like, how many projects do you have going on at once? Maybe do you have like
Too
different risky projects and lower risk projects, or how does that work?
You know, maybe this is a flaw in my nature to some degree. You know, I've accepted that it's there for sure. It's almost like the juggling plate act, you know, where you got them on those little sticks and you got them spinning. Each person who does that learns how many of these things they can actually keep going. And yeah, for maybe 15 different appearances, they can keep all these plates going. Invariably, there's going to be a time when something drops and breaks. And for me, a lot of the stuff that I've done for kids, you know, the books, the events, the tutoring, things like that, I've been fortunate enough to live long enough to see the end result of it. So there are children I worked with when I was 13. I will get back to your question. There were children I met when they were 13, and they were in theater groups that I worked with, or there were programs that I tutored or taught at. And I've since made contact with them, or they've come back into my life with their children. And I've been blessed to hear how whatever they learned from me when we were working together and they were doing shows with some of the other kids, how that impacted on their lives, and how it, you know, and they didn't become actors. Some of them didn't become, you know, performers or writers or whatever. They became, there's a young man who's a priest. There's another one who's in the military. There's another one who is an accountant, you know, but they felt validated. They felt that the time I spent with them, and we were creating plays, and we were creating comics, and we were creating stories, and we were watching films and talking about that, I helped them realize that their thoughts and their imagination are valid. Subsequently, problem solving in the business world was less challenging for them, or less scary, because they'd already expanded past that point where they go, yeah, I've got this idea. Let me see if I can work this out. I have a sense of how to process this. For me, like the character Blackjack that I created. All right, I created this character. Blackjack is, for those of you who don't know, it's an African-American soldier of fortune in the 1930s. And when I created him, it was back in the 80s. It was literally like 1979, 1981, something like that. And I did it partially, remember the kid in me now, I did it partially because as growing up as a young African-American kid in the United States and watching television and going to the movies and things, I didn't see Black heroes in 99% of the stuff that I was exposed to. They were basically everybody was white. The villains were white, except in the Tarzan movies, which we won't talk about. And it was that if you were looking for a hero and you were watching this stuff, it had to be these guys that were put in front of you. And they would go on these adventures in space or in the jungles or in the mountains or under the sea or all these. And so that meant if I was imagining myself doing these kind of adventures, I wasn't imagining myself as a white guy doing them or a white kid. I was imagining myself as this little brown kid running around or this teenager running around having these adventures, and because this is who I am. And when I went to create an adventure hero, the first thought was someone that represents the kid in me who wanted to do this or wanted to create something like this all those years ago. So it was originally very, very selfish of me in terms of those desires. But then what started to happen was, and again, this goes to the process, I also thought about all the films and things I had seen where, again, like Charlie Chan, except for one or two movies in the early 30s, never played by an actual Chinese actor. That all of the major sequel films that most people know played by a white man in makeup. And that the only real Chinese actors who were consistent to the series were for comedic purposes, just like there were several black actors who were there for comedic purposes. But, well, okay, that's not right. And then a lot of the jungle films, okay, no go Bawana, bad juju, big eyes running around afraid of this one white guy. There's hundreds of you, but there's one white guy that's scaring the Jesus out of you. Okay, got a problem with that, like Tarzan, but I got a problem with the sensibility of the people who also live there. And, so I gotta, when I approach that material, I've got to do something about that. And then sort of expand it to all the different cultures, races, and women who look like idiots in a lot of the stuff I enjoyed watching. I said, well, I'm not going to do that when I create this character. I've got to tell this story right and try and be as genuine and as authentic as I can be and still have it to be entertaining. So Blackjack became a mission for me. I didn't think it would. I didn't plan it that way, but it did. And so here we are over 20 some odd years later with a number of things happening, and a lot of recognition. And I still don't have a Maserati, but I have 25 plus years of accolades over an independent character that I created and that I tried to be genuine with. Now, while I'm passionately working on that and passionately working on children's projects, I also have to pay bills. And so it becomes necessary to take on other kinds of assignments. So that goes to what you were asking earlier, is do I have all these things going? There are things I must creatively do. I can't. I spent about a 5-year period where I said, you know what? This is not practical. I'm just going to work at a job. I've got a family to take care of. I got it. And I almost died inside. I shut down. I was not depressed, but I was like a tortoise. I mean, you hear the energy in me now. That was not there. And I didn't realize that I'd shut off myself emotionally too, in a lot of ways, because, and I won't speak for you, but I'm in the back of my head, I'm assuming when you're working on something and you're really into it and it's working the way you want it to, and you're seeing this vision you had in your head really come alive on the page or whatever, the energy in you is, you could probably power a small city. And that's what I feel. And to shut all that down for almost 5 years was hell. And so when I finally realized I'd shut off my emotions to a certain degree, my creativity, so that I was basically bottling up who I was in favor of trying to become something that would fit in, I went, no, this is death. This is not working. And I also, it's not what I wanted to teach my kids. I did not want to teach my kids to become zombies. I want them to be who they are and try and find a way to have a practical series of things coming into your life that benefit you on that day-to-day basis. But no, don't become something totally other than who you are. So I juggle a lot of projects because of that, but also because I have a lot of stuff going on in my head.
So that sounds like there's a lot of perspective taking there too. Like, so it's like, yeah, it's hard. And I manage the ups and downs of that by thinking about, well, what's the alternative, and reminding myself of why I do this in the first place. So there's like there's a sense of purpose that you can kind of grab onto, you know.
You have to, and it comes with cost, but you have to figure it out, because otherwise you become that bitter individual who either takes it out on the family, or my personal favorite, because I used to do temp work a lot when I was younger, you know. I go to work at some office job thing, and within 2 days, invariably, 1 or 2 men would come up to me. Oh, you're an actor, huh? Yeah, I used to be an actor till the wife had the kids. I went, really? Whose kids? And they would look at me like, what do you mean? Well, you know, you made it sound like she went out and did that on her own. I was just checking. You know, there are scientific ways to pull that off, but I was just like, you might have been somewhat involved. Yeah, oh yeah, well, you know.
No, it was Zeus.
He turned it around. Yeah. So yeah, it comes with a cost, but again, you have to sort of face those things. You have to make those decisions for yourself, absolutely. And I'm not advocating that everybody do what I did, Lord, please. But I do say, try to be as true to yourself as you can be, and take care of yourself as best you can.
I have a quick sort of double-sided question, and it's about the book ending of that 5-year experience that you mentioned. What convinced you to try to shut down those projects? What was that logic, and then what broke it down on the other side?
Well, first off, the Blackjack project for me was, I found backers because I couldn't get mainstream comic book companies to move on it. There were several people within 2 or 3 companies that were very interested and tried to get their companies to go for it, but it didn't work. And so I was showing the material to writers and artists and people who would be just, I guess, what we would call the basic fan base. And everyone's, oh, this is really cool, this is really cool. But I couldn't get anybody to produce it. So again, you reach that point where you say, well, okay, put it on the shelf, forget about it. Or, and then the ideas begin to come, and you start to think about who could you pull into this? Yeah, and that's basically me.
That's a great blueberry, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anytime I can help. So I began to talk to some business people I knew who had some money, and they liked the idea too. And eventually I got a partnership going with one of them. And so we were independently producing in 1996, which is that early era of independent comics and so forth. And for a few years, for like 3 years, we were doing okay. We were building. It was going slower than I wanted it to, but we were building a fan base, and it was a global fan base, which was the other cool thing. Because a lot of people have said, oh, you got a black lead, you don't have women half dressed, you don't have a lot of sex, you don't have cursing in there, there's no market for it, or it's only going to sell to the Negroes in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, Watts, California. Not a big market. Actually, there are a lot of black people, but that's another story. So I basically, when the book came out, the first thing that shocked the heck out of me was all of the great reviews that we got. I mean, I know I put 110 in. I managed to pull together a fantastic team of people to work with. The illustrator was Joe Bennett, who was already known in the business. The colorist was a young guy who didn't have a lot of gigs going at the time, but extremely talented and committed to his work, named James Brown, not the singer. And then a couple, my buddy Chris Ryan was helping at that time. A high school friend of mine who was a graphic designer named Elizabeth Sheehan jumped in there. Another buddy of mine who was actually taught me to be an editor named Bill McKay jumped in. So we were all bringing our A game as best we could, and the book got all these great reviews. So suddenly I'm getting fan mail from, Copenhagen, from Mexico, from France, a couple of other places, as well as places in the United States. And I'm thinking, where are the brothers hanging out in Copenhagen? Because before it was, oh no, it's never going to go beyond. So we realized that we had a good property here, but we also didn't have the machine behind it to keep it going. And so after about 3-4 years, I'm sorry, I need to mention also the Hildebrands and Brian Stelfreeze, because these were A-game cover artists who brought their price down like to a minuscule number to do artwork for the book. And I mean, the stuff just shined. All of that talent, all of that commitment, all of that dedication by these people. But within 3 to 4 years, we still weren't making the kind of money that would help keep it going. And the backers said, I got to pull out, you know, really. And so suddenly you don't have the money to do the job the way you know it needs to be done. And that hurt. I mean, I understood. There was no anger there with that person, but it was very frustrating. And the book had to come to an end. And once that happened, I'd had a shot at doing some stuff with DC and a couple of others. And that's another story, but it didn't work out as well as I would have liked. And subsequently, it looked like, okay, what I've been going for with this isn't going to happen. I had my shot. I don't have anything else big on my plate that's demanding my attention that I feel committed to. And I started to think, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was not as big a deal or as fantastic this or whatever as I thought, or as we all thought. And I got to get real. I've got kids, you know, my wife is having some health problems. So I gotta get my head in gear. The problem with that was, again, people would see all this work that I did creatively, but they wouldn't see I was a junior executive at such and such. And so I'm getting judged that way as not being of value because I don't have the credentials that tell them that I'm a working stiff or I'm executive material. And subsequently, what do we do with you? You're a nice guy, you know, but, you know, I don't know what to do with you. So you start to feel pretty low. You start to really sort of sink, and you start to figure out what I am and who I am doesn't seem to make sense in this world. And what do I do? And I will let you know right off the bat, taking my life was not ever an option. You know, it never went that bad, for one. And I was raised by my mom, who I mentioned earlier, and we don't quit. We can be beaten, but we don't quit. So it was really just a frustrating time and a scary time when I didn't know what was going to work. And what little work I was getting was not bringing in a great deal of money. So it's a struggle, and juggle. That was a struggle and juggle. That's what we'll call that era. Yeah. And, 5 years of that, you reach a point where you either become convinced that everything is all downhill, or some part of you goes, wait the blankety blank minute. And you go quiet inside and you shut out the world for a moment and you listen. And you really pay attention to what you hear in your head or your heart or whatever metaphor you want to use for that. But you really have to listen to who you are. And then try and figure out, okay, if this is really what I'm about, what do I do with it? Where do I get help to figure out how to be the best me possible? And that was what happened, that 5-minute period. It took 2-3 days, and then me making notes and stuff like that, just gibberish, but understanding that I was trying to process the fact that I get it now. I get this part is who I really am. What do I do with it? How do I make it work? And it was the uphill climb back to normalcy for me was a rough one. And I have to thank my boys for that. You know, my wife was there, absolutely, but my sons did a couple of things and said a couple of things in their youth that really helped fuel me, you know, and I will always be grateful to them for that.
Wow, that sounds intense. That sounds absolutely intense. And I know that Rob and I were nodding at each other as you were talking, because I think what you were describing sounds we can relate to many of those experiences that you were describing there.
It's not as some might think, you know.
Well, I also want to make a T-shirt that says "Struggle and Juggle," because I think that's a philosophy encapsulated right there.
Hashtag struggle and juggle. Yes.
Okay, so you know what? I think this is a good spot to switch to a quick ad break. Now, I want to offer you, Alex, the opportunity to talk, since we've been talking about blackjack a little bit. before we jump into our ad break, did you want to talk about the new thing that's happening with Blackjack?
Oh, well, yeah, there's a couple of things, but I'll try and condense it because I don't know. Do I have 30 seconds?
You can have 3 minutes if you want. This can be a long ad break for you. Go for it.
Cool. So again, Blackjack, which I've been doing since 1996 or so, is again the story of an African American soldier, fortune 1930s. In real life, a lot of black men went and fought in World War I, and they fought with Roosevelt and Cuba and so forth, and didn't want to come back to the States because they figured, out here I feel more like a man. I'm showing my strength, my cunning. I'm being treated better in these other countries than I am back in the States. So my character's father was, in my stories, is one of those men, and he's sending money back to the family. And the wife says, "This is great. You're sending us money. That's nice, but your kids don't know their father, and this is not a marriage. So we're going to come with you. We're going to travel with you wherever you're going, wherever you're battling. We'll be in a safe city or town or farm, someplace not that far away from you. So whenever that's over, you can come back to us." So Aaron, my character, grows up seeing his dad coming back from a number of these skirmishes or battles, sometimes wounded and everything, but basically this sort of warrior figure. And he wants to be just like him, except his father was, "You pay me, I do what I got to do. I don't care." Mom has been exposing Aaron and his older sister to the different cultures they were living among while traveling with their father. So Aaron's perception of the world and his sister's perception is broader, wider, more informed than his father. And Aaron starts to realize, as he's following his father's footsteps initially, some of the things I've done or some of the things I'm being asked to do, they don't sit well with me. I understand politically or otherwise, there are ramifications here. This is not going to work. I can't do this. And I have to start deciding where my father ends and where I begin and what I will and won't do for the money. So the stories are adventure stories and globetrotting, mystery and all that. And that's all there. I love action adventure. But it's also about a black man who's trying to establish his identity at a time when we're not supposed to have one at all. And I never thought of the series as just him. The fact that his parents are dead is one thing. That's another story. But his sister is alive. And she is very clear. We're family. I'm going to stay here in the States. You're going to be out there globetrotting all over the world. But don't you forget where your family is, because I will find you and kick your butt. I can still do that, right? So Mary, his sister, I've always wanted to do stories about her. So I have Blackjack out there. We have 3 graphic novels, Second Bite of the Cobra, which Dover put out, Blood and Honor. And we have also Blackjack, There Came a Dark Hunter. And that's what Tim Fielder was the artist on that. And those are great. And then we have, I would call them collections of short stories and a novel or two called Blackjack, Ransom for a Dead King, Blackjack Shooters, Blackjack Buried Secrets. These are all on Amazon that you can get them. Just go on Amazon and just type in Blackjack. And if you want to be a little bit, more focused, say Blackjack Shooters, for instance, and then all the others will pop up. So you can get them there. But I wanted also Mary's stories to come out. And so this month, as a secret present to my daughter, this is her birthday month, I'm finally putting out 4 of the stories that I've written about Mary in a book called The Day Chronicles, The Secret Life of Mary Day. And that's what you're seeing up on the screen there, you marvelous person. You look at the tech. Look at these guys got it together, So that's coming out on the 30th. It'll be available both digitally and hard copy wise through Amazon. And there's a couple of other things I'm doing with Blackjack, as well as this summer, actually this June, I have a book coming out called Black Panther Psychology. I'm the co-editor on that. That's on the one that has, yes, there you go. I'm the co-editor on that with Travis Langley, who's done a series of these psychology books on different comic book characters. But Travis brought me in as a co-editor on that. I have some writing in that. It's been really exciting to work on it. So that's going to debut in June, and we'll be at the San Diego Comic-Con doing a panel on it. So I'll be out there with the people who gave me the Inkpot Award. Get to hang with them again,
Awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, those are some of the things that I'm doing right now. There's more, but I'll leave it at that.
Also, well, if I could underline one more thing on the list, is that your book, The Art of Making Comics, it's a fabulous book about how to make comics, and I bought it for my nephew, Alexander, who is
you named Alexander?
Yes, who is a budding cartoonist. He's like 11.
I love this. Okay.
So and so we got the book. I read through it. I loved it. If you have a young person in your life who is interested in making comics, get them this book. It's a wonderful addition to all the great books out there about how to make comics. So The Art of Making Comics by Alex Simmons
on Amazon.
There we go.
And if you're in Russia, it's available there too. It's translated. It's the second book I've ever written that was translated into another language.
Super cool. Okay, so blackjackadventures.com is where people can find information about this comic as well. So,
yeah, and I have confirmed if you search for Blackjack Shooter on Amazon, you get all the books. So,
thank you, sir.
Okay, well, Rob, are you ready to take a quick ad break?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so about a minute and 30 seconds, we're going to get to talking about a little bit more about advocacy and how that affects your work. But before we do that, we have to thank some people who make this show possible. And those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Yes, patreon.com/leanintoart is the website. What is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote. You can say, I believe in Rob and Jerzy. I believe in what they do. I'm going to chip in $1 a month, as little as $1 a month. You can join all the people who support us there. And I want to thank 5 of those people who have been doing exactly that. First up, Stephen Stonebush. Thank you, Stephen, for believing in us. And Owen Jolins. You can find Owen on Twitter at Comic Colorist. 2 C's in the middle there. Thank you, Owen. Also, Spaceman360. Thank you, Spaceman360, for supporting us. Cameron Callahan. You can find Cameron on Twitter at Cam Callahan. And finally, Chris Watkins. Thank you guys, all of you, for supporting us there at patreon.com/leanintoart. And if you sign up for as little as $1 a month, you'll see all the posts, all the shows we make, as well as the extra leans, the shows that we record only for people who support us on Patreon. Those posts become an open mic prompt where you can talk about whatever you want in a safe place where fellow leaners are hanging out. Once again, that website is patreon.com/leanintoart. Thank you, everybody who has been supporting us there. It means a lot to us.
It does. Thank you so much.
That's really cool.
Right.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's all Jerzy, to be honest. The shows where I'm running, I'm like, I'm lucky if there's interstitial music. So
I'm not going to go there. I'll let you guys hash that out later.
Speaking of interstitial music, I have another one lined up for Alex's appearance here. There we go. Now we're in the second half of the show. Okay. So.
You're really into the cartoon show themes.
Well,
yes, he is. I mean, I am too, but again, this is one of those, it's like holding a candle up to like a lighthouse. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Well, I want you to know that the background music for all of the kids' Comic-Cons is a 2-disc set that my son Matthew and I created of cartoon show themes from back in the day forward. That's one of the things we do. So if you ever come to one of our events, you'll hear in the background all these different themes going by.
One of my unfulfilled ambitions in life is to actually be at Kids Comic-Con. One of these years I'm going to do it. Maybe next year. 14 is a good year. You know, Alex, that the Kids Read Comics organization, which organizes the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival, was directly inspired by your event, right?
Dan said that, and believe me, I appreciate that. Although yes, Dan came to one of the first KCCs, and he was really excited about it. And we talked a lot about wanting to do a con out there. And Dan had all these ideas and everything. I said, Dan, just create your own. I'll back you up, whatever we can do. And you guys have run with it, and you've done a marvelous job. And, the reality, too, is we need more of these, done by the right people, I might add. Because, I've seen some that were just people going, oh, yeah, that kids thing, put it over in the corner. Move the mouse back. Okay. And it's not. That's not what we need. We need what you guys are doing, what we've done in several locations over the years. Because the kids deserve it, and families deserve it. That's the other thing, is watching the families have a good time together. That's a marvelous thing, and you don't get to see that a lot, or as much as we should, anyway.
Yeah,
that is
I totally agree.
It's a lovely thought, and you will get no argument from neither Rob nor I. But I'm curious from a practical standpoint now, because like something we've explored in the show in the past is like how being kind to people has practical benefits in a variety of ways that I don't think it's underlined enough. But I'm wondering if I get your take on this. Is that like, so you, as we've said, have done a lot of advocacy work and continue to, and you just said earlier on about how like teaching classes, even if they don't even if they don't follow the career path that you follow, if they do some other career, you've shown them the procedure of a thing, which can be applied to a variety of situations. But now, turning it back on yourself, is there any way, if so, how, that your work or your relationship with your work has changed because of your advocacy work? So is the creative work ever affected by or informed by or changed by the advocacy work?
I can definitely answer it's informed by it. Absolutely. Let's just talk. I get very heartfelt about things, but just talking practically for a moment. So at the second or third year of KCC, all right, so what we've done, we've done these cute family things up in the Bronx on an area that's not exactly right there at the subway station. You know, you got to come off the train and walk up a hill and around the corners and climb over some fences and things to get there. So it's not near Comic-Con. And what happened in doing this was the word somehow got out. You know, I don't know. We had no huge PR budget. But I got called in by an executive at Nickelodeon. And they asked me, in effect, to look over the original material that they were creating for children, cartoons and things like that, because the shows weren't going over. Now, I want you to understand, I had never done any business with Nickelodeon. I did not know this executive, you know, as a friend from way back in the day or anything. Literally, they called on me because they'd heard about what I was doing with KCC. And I looked at the material that they gave me DVDs to check and some other things. And yeah, I spotted what the problem was. To me, it was very obvious what the problem was. And when I went back to speak to the executive, I said, let me make an assumption here. And please correct me if I'm wrong. I said, your writers are somewhere between 20 and maybe 27. Yeah. I said, they're guys predominantly. Yeah. Maybe one or two of them have a child. How did you know? I said, because it's obvious that most of this material is not only formulaic, but it's written for the guys who are writing it who think they know what kids want or like. I said, but nothing in this resonates as an engaging piece of entertainment for kids. And I said, and that's a problem. You know, I understand there are professionals who maybe still only have one child, but they know their subject matter. They know what resonates with children. And I said, and I think you guys need to be immersed in that. Well, what would you do? How would you do this? And I worked out a plan, and they were going to go for it until the hierarchy, the overlords, said, no, we're going to call in a professional team that's going to do a survey, and they're going to do this, and then the groups come in. And, okay, fine. So let me see if I got this right. You're going to add more adults to the mix to try and figure out why the guys who are not being exposed to kids and getting that feedback aren't writing material for your kid-like audience. Which, again, they didn't say yes to, but that's exactly what they did. And they paid them, you know, a great load of money and made no changes. So, from a practical standpoint.
So tell me that the part of this story was that secretly was your company that you got paid for that or something.
No,
I don't know. I want something. I want a better ending.
Sorry, no. But what I learned from it, personally and practically, is that I know my stuff.
Yeah.
That I'm committed to. I listen to kids. I listen to them because I am genuinely interested in what they have to say. I am genuinely interested in how they feel. They are not commodities to me. And because I actually pay attention, I am a kid whisperer. You know, I do have enough experience and knowledge to have a solid understanding. Maybe I'm not the top dog in the field, but I have a solid understanding of how to address programming for kids, how to help them have a good time. And that was only my third show of KCC at that time. We're talking, what, 16 years later? I'm sorry, this was our 13th. So we're talking 10 years later. I'm that much better. And I've worked with people that are that much better now. So yes, what you do, your advocacy helps you figure you out, but then it also, because you're not being hired and you're not moving up the ladder and you're not getting raises, your advocacy helps you to become more informed and more skilled in the field in which you are delving, yourself and your goals into. And I may not have phrased that exactly as the way I would like, but it is, one feeds the other. It is definitely a cycle. The more you do it, the more you are genuine about it, the more it works. And then the other thing is, and I've said this, and it took me a long time to get to this place. I want you to understand. There's a lot of insecurity stuff going on in there, and they had, over the years, they were going, no, maybe you shouldn't say that. Oh, maybe you're wrong. No, okay, yeah, I can be wrong, absolutely, but not too often. Not on this. And so, like, for instance, there are very few people that have worked with kids who come from an affluent background, and for kids who've been in lockup. I have. There are very few people who've done programming for children who are 6 years old and people who are 26 years old. I have. Who have traveled to various countries and still, even through interpreters, have been able to communicate and share ideas and hear them. I have. My advocacy to empower and validate young people and to help them see that we have a lot of good going on in this world. Please don't buy into it. It is all trash. Don't buy into the fact that people are telling you have to be ruthless and crass and divisive in order to make it. Please don't. My advocacy for that has introduced me to some remarkable human beings, and I would not change for anything. And if you then add the dollar equation to it, yeah, people should be paying me and the people I work with for some seriously good advice.
There's got to be a way to Trojan horse this. This is why I don't mean to be hung up on that, because you're right. The advice, it's almost like you have a very valuable product, but like the market is reluctant because the real market is you're helping the audience, the kids, right? But then there's a gatekeeper that is sort of your secondary market that has to sign a check. So I'm just spitballing, but might there be a business that looks like the unethical one, but turns out it's got the wholesome, listen to your audience advice.
Right?
It's got
clothing.
It's nutritious, but it looks like decadent. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's Mr. Rogers, but it looks like Caligula. That's what you're saying, Rob?
Okay, maybe not that far, but
Oh my God, yeah. Okay, I would say that I have run into some people that have, hired me or I've worked with on projects, and we're very much on the same page. And there have been some paychecks that have been very nice, and all that. But what I also have encountered is the people who couldn't give a flying squirrel, and subsequently, they're very much the bean counters, and I get it. It's frustrating, but I do understand where you're coming from. But for instance, Nickelodeon didn't fix the problem, and they went the route their execs thought, their hierarchy thought, this is the way to go. This is the way to improve this. All right. Now, had they given me the money and let me do what I was going to do, they would have seen improvement, because it doesn't have to be surveys and other men and women coming in suits and numbers. It has to be that your artists need to understand their audience. They need to get a sense of the humor in children and how to tickle that and how to engage them and how to get them to be amazed by this product that you're putting out, so that they want to be there. They want to see it. They want to buy it. Their parents are going to get them the t-shirts, all that other stuff. It organically makes sense. If the children love the product, they're going to want it bought for them, or they're going to buy it. But if you don't get that sensibility, then yeah, you're going to keep stepping on your own feet. And I think, again, it even goes to the independent comics that are being created now. There's a lot more variety now, because people, and I'm talking about quality material, I'm not just talking about anything that's being thrown on the floor, but there are people who are skilled at it. They may not be top of the line, but it doesn't matter. There's skilled storytellers, there's skilled illustrators, and they have something they really want to share, and it's engaging an audience, and they're either making a living out of it or building a fan base, and they're making life more interesting and engaging. And certainly now with all the streaming companies that exist, content is the thing. Content is king. So, you know, they don't have to wait for ABC or CBS or NBC to create a thing. You've got a slew of people out there creating content. And that's why there's more, like Netflix has hundreds of children's shows and cartoons and foreign films on there that you wouldn't have been able to find 10 years ago. So it really comes down to check out the new paradigm. You know, open yourself up to people who are living within the community that you want to reach, and listen to them. You know, when I work with children, especially since I write, you know, I've written, well, I'm not supposed to mention the series name, so let's put it this way. I've written stories about a teenage girl detective who lives in a small town and her father is a lawyer. And I've never been a teenage girl. You know, never have. I'm sure of that. I checked the birth rate. I've written about, you know, cartoon dog. Never been a Great Dane. No, don't like dog biscuits. I've written about a British detective. I was not alive in the 1800s. I do have a gray beard, but I'm not that old. But I do my homework. And I try and make it as genuine and as authentic as possible. And I listen to other people to get the information I need to help me do a better job. And it really is at times that simple. And if you come with your A game and you want to share the stories inside of you, theoretically, you should be able to make a living out of that. Now, it's a challenge at times, though.
Speaking of which, I've got the card up here on the screen, and because it has all the books that you were obliquely referring to, or at least a lot of them. And look at this. There's a free webinar coming up. You're starting up webinars again. And
Yeah.
if you go, I'm going to put this link in the show notes, but there's a new free webinar coming up on May 30th. And it's bit.ly/write characters. Write as in the verb, write, and then write as in the direction, right?
Right. Left, right. Yeah.
Characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is exciting. You going back to doing a new series of online webinars. That is something I think that the people who listen to this show would definitely want to avail themselves of.
Awesome, yeah.
Well, you know, I do a lot of these things at when I do conventions or when I do certain school visits or certain other events, and people will come up to me and they'll ask a ton of questions. And even as I'm teaching, you know, teaching screenwriting and cinema studies at New York Film Academy, I'm getting students from all over the world. I mean, literally, they come from so many different places on the globe, and a lot of the same questions are being asked. And it just made me think, you know, I don't get out enough to try and meet with people to try and just help them a little bit more, you know, just to move it a little bit further along the line. So I thought, well, you know, I can sit comfortably in my house and maybe do a series of summer webinars where I pick a different topic each time or a different element from creative writing and put in a good hour. People can come with their own ideas. You know, I've been working on something, I've been struggling with it. I will certainly share some techniques and things that I use, basic, that'll help them get through it, and just give a little, you know. Because that is fun for me, you know, and at some point I'm also developing an online course, but I'm doing so many other things that it's taking me a while to do the course. So I said, well, in the meantime, let me just share this. I did this, it was about a year or so ago around Thanksgiving. I did a few of these online on Facebook, as a matter of fact, just sharing that kind of information. It was funny because several people went, I'd given up writing until I heard from you. I said, oh, well, gee, I'm glad to help. You know, that's cool. That's great. So maybe they'll come back on and tell me how they've been doing.
I love this idea of like no good deed is ever wasted in that. I mean, yes, there's the unintended or rather unforeseen consequence of just helping people. That's great. But I love this idea of like, I'm going to do some free webinars because I'm getting ready to do an online course. And while it'll send out a signal to the world that, hey, I'm here as a resource in this capacity and it's free. So people will avail themselves of it. But B, that interaction is going to probably generate material for your online course because in interacting with people who actually are availing themselves of this experience, you're going to learn what more people actually need. Because I'm sure that when you teach, you're listening as much as you're speaking.
But that
if not listening more.
What I was saying, you've got to listen. You really need to. That in and of itself is something we all should work at. I mean, it's just in basic communication. How many times have people jumped on your sentence before you finished it and made an assumption of where you were going? You know, they weren't really listening to what you were saying. They were listening for an opening to jump in. You know, and that's not an exchange of ideas. That's not a real dialogue. You know, and someone said, "Well, how can you talk to that 7-year-old?" Well, because she opens her mouth, I open mine, and sounds come out. You know, it's pretty basic.
Wow. Well, how? Yeah. It's pretty great. I mean, it's a very, very like it's an inexhaustible idea. What you're describing, the idea of you have an opportunity, you connect with an audience, and you can listen to them and keep that process going. This like one course, one class can lead to in the next class. It can lead to new. Just learning and then using that. That's so awesome.
And it's even like with Kids Comic Con. It's something I said to Dan when he was going to do Kids Read Comics. I said, we can't be everywhere. So sometimes the resource is to help people get a sense of what it is they need, and they might go find it elsewhere. But at least you've helped them figure that out. You've put them on a path that's going to help them. And to me, that's still cool.
It's extremely cool. Okay, so we're coming up. I want to respect.
We celebrate
time.
The heck out of that around here.
Yes, we do. Absolutely, we do. And there's people showing up in the live chat who are all giving high fives to everything that you've been saying. As a matter of fact, we got one listener, Shadowing Tronics, Troy, was saying that he's recorded a couple of your appearances at Brass City Comic Con.
Oh,
and he says,
in Connecticut, yeah.
And he said that watching Alex work, especially with the kids, was really fun to watch in action. And agreed and underlined 3 times with black crayon. Okay, so how about we do for final thought, let's talk about the podcast a little bit, because I want to celebrate that podcast. It's a fabulous show that everybody listening right now should go subscribe to. Tell the Damn Story. We will link to it in the show notes, but we got to take one more ad break, and then we'll get back to that. So we'll make the ad break fast. And we got to thank some other people who make this show possible. Those people happen to be us. We make this show possible. And the thing that I make that I hope that you will check out is the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival, a2caf.com, specifically the Kids Comics Awards. So the ballot is open now until June 15th, 2019. And only kids are allowed to vote, and they can vote on their favorite comics from 2018 that were nominated by kids and a jury of educators and librarians. And so you can find it at a2caf.com/kids Comics Awards. There is an online ballot and a paper ballot that you can mail in, but you got to get it in by June 15th, 6 p.m. The winners will be announced at a special ceremony June 16th at the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival, a free festival in Ann Arbor this June. Rob, you just finished an amazing thing.
Well, thank you. I just finished a class on Skillshare that it's all about drawing user journey maps. It has a lot to do with similar principles that Alex was pointing out. The idea of like doing your homework, listening to others, and get info and do a better job. Well, I got to say, the whole discipline of user experience design is really all about that. And this class is a really handy hands-on way to get into the mechanics and the principles behind doing a great inclusive job of expressing the experience of whatever you're making and providing as a journey, and then adding more layers to it from other expertise points of view to just get a whole bunch of insights that can help you plan a way to move forward on a project. And I've wrapped all that up in this, it's like a 47-minute class on Skillshare.com. And if you're already part of the platform, awesome, join us, jump in. Be great to see and hear from you. But then if you're not, I do have a pretty handy link. We'll have it in the show notes. But if you're just sort of going from memory or just listening to the podcast and jumping to it, just go to robstenzinger.com. And I've got a featured little clickable thing there that points to drawing user journey maps to design user experiences, gather ideas, and collaborate.
You get 2 months free if you click that link. So you can try it out for free. So
exactly.
FYI. But if you're here because you like the way we think about stuff and you're not so much interested in the stuff that we make, fair enough. This show is another thing that we make, and we have more things like it at leanintoart.com/workshops, where you can download self-contained videos at a price of your choosing, even free. You don't have to pay a darn thing, but if you get some value out of it, a neat thing you could do to like say thank you is purchase a copy for a friend. Then you're doing a nice thing for a friend, and you're giving us a tip for this thing that we made for you. If you're watching the video on YouTube right now, give it a thumbs up. That helps more people find the show. And if you're listening to it in a podcast listening device like iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, giving us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to us helps more people find the show too. And thank you to everybody who has been doing those things. It means a lot to us.
Absolutely.
All right, final thought time. Let's talk about telling the damn story, because I am so over the moon for this show. You and Chris are so good together. The way you guys talk about storytelling.
Chris and I go back. Oh my goodness, probably it's about 30 years, and he on Tell the Damn Story, he's talked about how we met. But what's funny is I met him when I was like the artistic director for a children's arts group in the Bronx called Bronx Creative Arts for Youth. And he'd come to see the founder of the organization, a woman named Barbara Barlow, because he wanted to do some writing for us for the kids' programs and projects. And as he puts it, she was not impressed with him. So he said to her, "What do you have the most of?" And she said, "Well, somebody just donated a bunch of hats. We got all these little hats, and we want to do a kids' play. We don't know what we're going to do." So he said, "No, okay, fine." He goes home over the weekend and he writes this play involving all these hats and a bunch of kids in a classroom and a magic eraser board that comes to life as a creature and pulling them in, and they've got to just come up with a way of defeating this thing. And this is over the weekend. So that became a play called Billy Wizard and the Evil Eye. And I was directing and working with him, and that's how we met. And we come from different parts of the Bronx, and we like to call each other brother from another mother. But we get along. We've gone through a lot of stuff together. I'm the godfather of one of his sons, proudly, I might add. And it's been one of those things that we've shared a lot as friends. But he was also there when we were doing Blackjack, when I started it, and he just jumped right in. And sometimes he talks about Blackjack in ways that I'm going, wow, did I really create all that? It's like it blows up. But we would sit around and talk about the creative process, about writing, the good, the bad, the crazies. And eventually with Tim Fielder, we came up with the show, and we started with it several years ago on YouTube, the way you guys are doing, but yours is so much neater. And, we did it for a while, and we would have all kinds of different techniques and things in drawing or writing. And then it just got to be too much work with the editing and stuff. Like my son, Matthew, was helping. And so we sort of went on hiatus and missed it, really missed it. We would still have these conversations. Oh, that should be a show. That should be or maybe this would. Then I started thinking about all the people that I met at the cons that as I said earlier, I'm talking to them, they ask questions and I'm answering, thinking, this is not, no, this should be on air. This should at least be recorded. And Chris is, by the way, a teacher at a high school, and he teaches literature and writing, creative writing, as well as he can also teach theater. So we've got years of experience, and we actually want to share it. So we dug out Tell the Damn Story again, but I said, let's just keep it simple. Just be an audio piece. We'll record. We called it Unplugged for a while because I wasn't going to spend any time editing anything, So it's the raw stuff, it's just a, straight guitar, acoustic guitar, that's it, kind of thing. But, we're now approaching, this Sunday will be episode 88. And, we're really excited about that. And the feedback.
Congratulations.
Really good. Thank you. You guys are up to 200 and something. So, I'm in awe of you. But again, we've been getting some really good feedback. And I was looking at some, because I'm not really into analytics. I know it's like a necessary evil. So I was looking at them and I really got into it. I started, wait a minute, what's this button for? And I realized that the show, even though it's like a fraction of 1%, is being listened to in Europe. So when I dug a little deeper, there's like 4 other countries where somebody is listening to the show in that country. And I'm thinking, okay, I guess we've got something to give. I guess it's working. So we try. And sometimes, we can't be. You had a question there about mobility and all that, because we did one of the episodes where I was at we did one where we were both sitting at a diner with all the background sounds and everything. But there was also last year I was in Helsinki, and I did an episode from a cafe in Helsinki with him in beautiful downtown Jersey. It's about also sharing those experiences of travel, of, as we talked earlier, about meeting different people, sharing the mindsets of other creatives from other backgrounds. It's opening up the world as much as we possibly can to hopefully stimulate anybody who's interested in creativity, whether it's going to be a professional goal or it's just a personal thing, letting them know the world isn't all bad stuff. There are wonderful people out there doing some really great things. And there's some people going through some hard times. They're struggling just like we are. And so, again, that's more of a similarity than a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really empathize with your motivations for making your show. I find a lot of common ground there. So yeah, that is. I've only heard about like 1.5 so far. I'm excited to get more into it. I think the next one I have to listen to is the Avengers episode.
Oh,
yeah.
Starting
So
at this end and work your way backwards. You'll see our development too.
Okay. Yeah, that's so funny. That is there. So in the metrics and whatnot too. It's like, what are you? I don't know. Do you have goals for your show? Like, where do you want to see it go? Do you want to see it light up every country on the map, or?
Well, let's put it this way. I wouldn't fight that. I think we're and I'm going to use the word weak. Yeah, I'm going to use the word. I think where we're weakest is, and I've said this to artists for years. I said, if you're going to start a business or even an arts organization, and it's a bunch of artists creating it, you better have some people in the administrative and the numbers crunching arena who are just as good at their job as you are at your creative job, because it's a business. So to answer your question, I think where we're weak is neither one of us has a lot of time to really dig down into the analytics and really press hard on that. I don't like to use the word marketing, but that marketing or promotion plan that gets the word out to even more people to really build the base. I think right now what we're doing comfortably is taking care of the fan base we have. One of the hardest things for us was hitting the show every week. Sometimes we'd be running around doing different things and we didn't have time to get together to record it. And so we would skip a week, or we'd run another end. And I said, no, I got to stop. We got to stop that. We agreed. So if, like this last episode, I'd come back from Philadelphia from an event and Chris was tied up with something, a family event, and there wasn't time. So I went on and I talked about the experience I had at this event and some of the things I learned, in terms of creatively from that. And it's a solo episode, but that's allowed within the format. He can go to a convention and interview writers and people there, and we'll put up one of those there, or we'll put those up as separate episodes, maybe with a bookend or not. So we've kept the format loose enough that we can do that, but it's always got to share some what we hope is valued content, some instructive or some insightful material that's of use to the audience. And how successful we are, that's up to the fans to let us know. But I've been happy with a number of the episodes. I've been very pleased with how they've gone, and I like that we're still genuine, and I still feel that we've got a lot more to share.
One of the things that I really, speaking of the authenticity and the genuineness, is that I think the loose format and the simple format that you chose contributes to that, in that there's no big flashy theme song. It starts like a phone call. Right, it just starts with Chris's voice going like, "Hello, Alex,"
Yeah.
and it's really, it's like listening to the most thoughtful and incisive, or thoughtful and incisive, I think is good, phone call that you've ever listened to in your life.
Wow.
So I think I think that actually is a feature and not a bug of it. That like you guys are doing, like this is the bare minimum. This is what Rob and I call on the show all the time: minimum viable product, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But I think that it contributes
Yeah.
contributes to the authenticity. So that's another thing that I really enjoy about it. But yes, I feel like there's more people need to listen to the show who are interested in storytelling, writing, communicating, even visually, because you guys talk a lot about visuals too. Even when you're talking about visual language, like when there was one episode, Chris was talking about a parade. There was a parade.
The one,
Yeah,
not gay pride. It was women were marching.
the Women's March. That's
Yeah, the
right.
Women's March. Right, right.
And he was comparing it to a scene he wrote at the end of one of his stories, and in even the language he was using, and he was talking about the specific things you notice when you're noticing these things, like seeing people staying on top of a car, seeing this, seeing that, showed that even as a storyteller, this is, I'm going to quote one of my favorite authors, C.S. Lewis, is like, you have to make me say that it was terrible. Don't tell me it was terrible, right?
Exactly.
So
I think also when I talk to my students too, it's also about the characters. Even the ones who you or the audience might consider, it's a walk on, it's inconsequential or whatever. Something about them needs to help create that universe and make that universe feel real. So sometimes I'll get stuck on what kind of a waitress would be in this place. What would her attitude be? What is she wearing? And all she's going to do is come in and leave the liverwurst sandwich on the table. But somehow I want someone to go, oh yeah, I've been in a place like that. You want that to happen. And when I do, Blackjack being a period piece, 1930s, I've had illustrators at times, not so much these days, but in the early days, they would draw things. And I go, that's not a 30s suit. Or, these guys would be wearing hats, Or no, I asked for a Dodge Coupe 1933, and that's a Volkswagen. Okay. So this is not going to work, right? And it's really about attention to that kind of detail to help create that world visually in terms of illustrating, or if you're writing a screenplay, or if through the written word, allowing someone's imagination to conjure up that image. So I think it's very necessary for anyone who's writing, again, pro or for yourself or whatever, give yourself up to that moment. Give yourself up to the memories of the place that you're trying to describe. Go there, live there in your head, and pick out little things, not just the overall. They have chairs. What kind of chairs? You say they have stools. It's an old world kind of. Are the stools made of wood? Are there cushions on the wood? Are there chips in the legs? What is it that makes that place tangible for me when I go to read it? And both Chris and I are very much in that head. Yeah.
gosh, Alex, this is one of the best episodes we've ever done. I think it's safe to say. Thank you so much.
Enjoying talking to you guys. I mean, as you can tell, I'm not going, gee, look at the time. That's not happening here.
Thank you. That's great to hear. This has been awesome, Alex.
Well,
it really has.
I really enjoyed it.
So we're gonna close out, and before I do all the little bit of housekeeping announcements, where can people find you besides Tell the Damn Story? What's one place that you wish people go check out right now?
Well, I mean, seriously, Tell the Damn Story is the one place where I pop up yakking my head off consistently. So that's definite. And we drop a show usually every Sunday, sometimes Sunday morning, sometimes Sunday evening, but it's Sunday. You can go to my website to try and check up on what I'm doing. Facebook is a good thing too, because I check in on my Facebook page. That's sort of active. And of course, on May 30th, I'm going to be doing the webinar. So you'll have a link there or whatever. Literally, folks, come ask questions. You can come and talk about some project that you've been working on that you may be having some sort of difficulty with, and maybe perhaps I can help. That would be good. And then I think probably the next public appearance I'm going to be making won't be until late July at the San Diego Comic-Con. But if that changes, I will certainly put it up on Facebook and website and Instagram.
All right, we will link to all of those, and don't forget, everybody, the May 31st deal, the Day Chronicles.
Oh, the day.
The story of
Mary. Yeah. I'm sorry. I got it. You're right. Thank you so much, Jerzy. You saved me. So the 30th is a webinar, but the 31st of May is the Day Chronicles debut, and that's going to be, you know, the secret life of Mary Day. And so Erin Day, Blackjack's sister, is going to have her moment. And I'll share a very, very quick thing with you about writing. When I created Blackjack back in the 80s and then it debuted in the 90s, you know, the mid 90s, Mary was always a part of the storyline in my head. There's a whole family, you know, history and line that I've worked out in it. But I had her do something in the very first book. They returned to the United States and she moves to the South. I'm thinking, you know, at one point, Black woman comes back from living in Europe for several years and her brother's going to stay in New York and she's moving south in the 1930s. Why? And it's just in my head. That's what she does. It felt right. It was what the character was doing, blah, blah, blah. So for several years, I would write little moments of her in the stories, or I'd think about her and I started writing something, but I never really answered that question. Over the past year, I've written 2 short stories about her. And in writing those stories, she told me why she moved to the South. And it hit me. I went, oh, of course. But this is many years of knowing that she's important to the legacy and all that, and having no idea why that happened until I got to know her better. So sometimes that is what happens with a creative process. The more you put into it, the more you get out of it.
That's good. And if you pre-order the Day Chronicles now for $5 hard copy, you'll receive a free PDF copy of one of the original Blackjack graphic novels, Blackjack, Blood and Honor. So,
yeah. So the Day Chronicles link is up there too. You have it, I think, right? It should be. If you
I
don't,
believe. All right, but we will put it in the show notes. It'll be on the site as of Friday afternoon.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's an amazing deal, by the way. So
yeah,
good too.
Yeah, just honestly, there's a little resistance to, oh, his sister. Well, gee, what's she gonna do? Or it's a girl. You know, I'm going. Let's get past this, please. So here, I'll give you a little bit of Erin here. That'll help you out. You know, remind you of who she is, how important she is, and then pick up the book and read it. You know.
Good marketing.
Yeah, thank you. I try.
Thank you again, Alex.
Analytics, but I try.
All right. So thank you once again, Alex. And we record this show every Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central. We stream it live on YouTube and then collect it as a podcast at leanintoart.com and patreon.com/leanintoart. We'll be back with another episode soon. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I have been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com, and I'm also on Instagram as Rob Stenzinger.
And I'm Jimmy Mathers as the Beaver.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
Okay, I'm going to turn off the stream, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thanks to those in the Hangout.